mess around with this definition and say that all those type structures are decks, I guess. That way it would fall under. But if you want to set separate entity between decks and patios, I'm not sure why we got patios in the zoning code anyway. We don't really govern over them.
Only thing I remember in our discussion probably a year ago, sometimes patios want to make sure that they meet setbacks, especially off of a lane or alley. And so that might require a visit or something. I don't want to muddy the water or be the devil's advocate or anything. We're trying to do this to make for clarity. And so that's the reason I brought it up.
In my understanding, in the recent past, when we talk about a patio, a concrete patio that's poured, we require a building permit for it. So we can make sure it's set up, just like we would require a building permit for a deck or a porch. Porch is covered porch or covered deck. So I'm not real sure how much more we wanted to find. Ed, what do you think?
No, it looks like it's fine because of this problem. This is maybe we can revisit to change the description.
Okay.
Have we seen any problem with the definition now?
There hasn't been, and we've had a couple permitted, and there hasn't been any issue.
I'm in favor of leaving it alone at this point. If everybody else is. If we don't, I think we need to put that as a bullet item for another meeting to discuss and decide on it.
It may also be valuable to review the minutes from the zoning, but this was discussed. Is that word? At recent zoning board meetings before the 22 revision, I need hours. So rather than maybe to read, it might be worth it to take a look at those and see what was considered and decide to be brought up again. But so far it has not been problematic. The definitions are pretty clear. There aren't that many places left in town to put these, and so it may not be worth the time.
That's my feeling on it now. It's not.
I'm happy with page 6.
Okay. So, was there anything else on page 6 that anybody saw? All right, I'm gonna go to 7. 7, the only thing I see that was a change was under section 5 of the zoning maps, the appendix B for the town of Pitkin's current zoning map. And that was voted on, discussed back on January 15th of 2024. I think that was an easy addition to it. Okay, I'm going to leave page 7 alone. Let's go to 8. I do not see any changes we made in page 8. Or needed to, right? Page 9, under space requirements, section 12C, yard setback. We changed it actually in C and D, where we added, where it said alleys, we added lanes to 4 different lines there on C and D. Was the only change on that? Since we really have lanes now rather than alleys.
Well, I think the way it's printed is alley/lanes. Either one is
that is the way it's printed.
Yes, and I'd like to see it left that way.
That's what we decided on.
Yeah.
It was originally just alleys, and we added the lanes to it. We didn't strike out alleys.
Can I make a quick comment?
Sure.
At the very top of page 9, it says camping is allowed in compliance with ordinance 3 series 2013. It may be a good idea to just make a general statement that camping is allowed in compliance with any camping ordinances in the town of Pitkin. That way, in the future, those change.
Okay, are you on
At the very top, mine is on the very top of page 9. It could also be at the bottom of page 8.
Page
for
8.
you.
by
Yeah.
camping by trailer, motorhome, and tent is allowed?
Right, so it says right now it's allowed in compliance, but it needs a specific ordinance. And
Yes,
so it's kind of similarly to how we, instead of putting an actual fee in here, we just reference the fee schedule. It may be a good idea to just reference in
Camping.
compliance with camping ordinances of the town of Pitkin. Because actually, right now we have 2. And
true.
so this isn't even up to date with what we
That's
have right
great.
now. And that
So,
way, if those happen to change, then we don't have to update the zoning code and the
Right.
references match.
Right. so it would be, if I'm following you correctly, we would strike out the ordinance 3 series 2013,
Mhm.
which addresses,
Right,
and just leave it as in compliance with current camping ordinances. in the town.
right. Yes, that would be my suggestion, just because it keeps things cleaner for moving forward.
I would not object to that. Does anybody else have an objection to that?
I'm still praising myself.
Okay,
Yes, so paragraph here tying into this.
yeah, but all it is. So it says camping by trailer, motorhome, or tent is allowed on private property in compliance with the ordinance 3 series 2013. So we strike out of that verbiage the ordinance 3 series 2013.
Right, and it would say in compliance with camping ordinances in the town of Pitkin.
So
So just strike the ordinance 3 series 2013, those 5 words or so.
and then we want to put which in compliance with the current
Sure.
current camping ordinance.
Sure.
Is, because there's 2 of them.
The only word you're going to inject is current.
Correct.
Yes. And you make that change. All right, so then on page 9, after the lanes, section E, the fence setback. We're gonna strike all fences require a building, strike building. And add fence permit. And then at the end of that, add above ground, put ATS markers are exempt from the fence permit fee, but must meet setbacks and fence height requirements. Okay with page 9 then? Roger, if you disagree, jump in, please.
No, I
I'm
think we
Right, go ahead,
needed to clarify that. That sounds good.
Mr. Pino, just for the audience on Zoom and out in front of us. I spent quite a bit of time this afternoon looking up each one of our agenda items for the dates that you have at the end of these printed. Like 12/18/23,
Yes.
and near as I can tell, every one of them lines up with notes on my agenda, so it's not this is not a railroad job just for me. I just want to be honest.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, the way we came up with those dates, is Sarah and I sat down and went through the document. And looked at the minutes of each of the meetings and identified when it was voted on and the dates. So yes, that's how we came up. Good to point that out. Okay, I'm gonna leave 9 alone. I'm gonna go to 10, and I did not see any changes that we made in 10, nor any changes that I saw that we needed to make. And on to page 11, same, no changes that were made or that I saw needed to be. And then on to 13,
How about 12?
oh, I'm sorry, page 12. I don't know why I jumped there. But it is page 12, section 17, under demolition. And we added the state of Colorado demolition permit is required for all building structure demolition in the town of Pitkin. The state of Colorado demolition permit must be obtained prior to beginning any demolition. We approved it back on September 12th of 24 and rediscussed it on October 14th of 24 and decided that a state permit is the only permit required.
And the only thing I found in my notes on that, Mr. Chairman, was that we mentioned the nuisance ordinance. In my notes, we did not make a motion to include it, but that we did not want to overlook the nuisance of smoke, for example, and or flying debris. I don't know if it's trustee, but be interested in that or not or what. That's the only thing I saw other than what you have printed here on this paper.
Yeah, my only thought on that is perhaps we should give some consideration to what is being demolished. Houses, sheds, garages, fences. I mean, we got to clarify what you need a permit for. Now, I realize this references Colorado demolition permit, but I don't know what the state permit is.
Yes, building slash structure.
Yeah, it says building slash structure. And if I remember correctly, we took that from the state of Colorado permit when they require a permit. Look and see if I have it. So it does say building or structure. So that wouldn't include something like a fence. But a house or a barn or a shed, I would say is a structure. And then at that point, if you're gonna do the demolition on it, you've got to go through the state of Colorado regulation, which is online.
By my recollection, Mr. Bolts brought this to our attention because of lead, paint, and asbestos. And we didn't have anything to mention in our ordinance, and he thought that we ought to address.
So when I agree with it, that's how it came about. But when I look at the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, under demolition notification abatement permits, they simply say you must provide notification for all demolitions of all facilities. See definition and regulation 8 of the regulations part B. And my take on it is that if we're going to require a state of Colorado demolition permit, then we direct people to go to the state of Colorado for their permission. Let them define what it should be. That's my input on it.
And if you read the paragraph real closely, we do not require one for a fee or anything for the town of Pitkin.
That is correct. I know when we discussed it, we said, let's leave it up to the property owner to go to the state of Colorado, see what the procedure is for the demolition of that. And it kind of basically, I won't say it leaves us out of the picture, but it puts the burden on the state and not on us. That's my 2 cents on it. Anything else on Okay, I'm gonna say we leave it the way we've gotten it, or have it currently. And then move on to section 18, building permits. Under A. We added, we struck on the second to last line of that paragraph, permit of. So unless a variance has been issued by the Board of Zoning Adjustment, then added, or the Board of Trustees have as applicant. Last item on that page was storage sheds of 120 square feet or smaller. We added a fee will be charged for setback verification. Fees will be listed in the town of Pitkin fee schedule. And then down to section 2 of or number 2 of section 18. Any building or structure greater than 120 square feet that is relocated within a property owner's boundary will require setback verification. The verification fee will be listed in the town of Pitkin fee schedule. Clarify that. If anybody moves construction greater than 120 square feet. That's takes me to the bottom of 13, going into section 8. So with any other additions or changes anybody picked up we needed to do on the rest of page 13, besides H, because I believe it's in the 14.
Well, item 3 at the top of that page, referencing decks, porches, required building permit, subject to building fees. It doesn't say anything about, patios or anything else.
Get in
You
there.
know,
That needs to be in there. All decks, patios.
Alphabetical order.
And then anything else on page 13?
Just that we eliminate the first full sentence on H.
That goes into H. So let's go there. We struck the first sentence of H. And then changed H to a building permit is valid for 3 years from the date of issuance and will expire after 3 years. The date of expiration can be extended once per annum upon payment of a renewal fee if there have been no changes to the original permitted design or specifications. And then changes to the footprint, increased square footage, or altered drip line requires a new permit. And expired permit notifications will be sent to responsible persons via USPS, return receipt required.
well, as you know, I'm opposed to building permits expiring for several reasons. The most obvious is that you lose all control from the building inspector, who no longer has any jurisdiction over the building project if the permit expires. And the person building has no obligation to, to include the town of Pitkin to finish his project if his building permit expires or not. He's going to have contractors, licensed contractors, plumbing, electrical, you name it, probably involved, and has taken considerable amount of time to get on their list to get them to Pitkin to finish up his project. He's not going to call them off just simply because you say his building permit expired. I don't like this unless there is some justification for an expiration that benefits the town. Why is a building permit expire before the building is completed? How does that benefit anyone in town? It
So-
certainly does not benefit the person trying to build it, the structure.
So a couple of things, Roger. One is we hashed this out back in October 16th of 23. And then revisited back on September 12th of 24. With a 3-1 vote to put it the way it is. Now, the zoning code does say that a building permit is required to build in the town of Pitkin. And if the building permit expires, then at that point, you do not have a valid building permit. And the town at that point can stop construction at that site. Putting an ending date or an expiration on the permit does help the town, so we have places finished and not hanging like they've been sitting for 10 or 15 years without being completed. So it does help solve that issue. We did in the NH, we are allowing, it expires after 3 years, but we are allowing the property owner to extend once per annum or once a year that permit, so they could go into a 4th year or 5th year. So it would be advisable to the property owner, if they see they're not going to be able to complete it in 3 years, to extend their permit for another year. And we decided there would be a renewal fee for to try to help encourage people to get them finished. And that's, we've already hashed this already 2
And
different
that
times.
takes precedent over an individual's right to finish their project that they start. I don't get it. I really don't see how the town thinks that, you know, they can put, particularly a small town like Pitkin, has no law enforcement, has no enforcement officer, going to go around telling people in a seasonal town where it's often runs way beyond 3 years before you can get enough contractors and subcontractors up there to finish a big project. I just don't, you're going to run off contractors. They're going to say, Pitkin, Colorado, why work there? Or they're going to jump the price up to where people aren't going to be able to afford to build anything.
I don't think.
Now,
that
I've never worked with a building permit my entire life that expired. I just don't get it.
Well,
If there's a problem in Pitkin with unfinished buildings, I'll tell you who's worried about unfinished buildings. The owner of the property, the person that hired the job to be done. Those are the people that are worried about getting the thing done. And if you borrowed money on it, the bank is going to pay you on a schedule. So much work is done, they give you a certain amount of money. The rest of it is done, they don't give it all to you at once. If a contractor is going to get paid, he has to finish the project. Most of his profit is in the final payment of building a home. Now you're saying that, you know, if it just doesn't work out in 3 years, you know, you're going to, you know, put more pressure on him. I really don't understand how this benefits anyone in town.
okay.
We don't have so many unfinished businesses in town or anything else. Where did this all come from? Who are you mad at?
Okay, Roger, I'm gonna stop because we've been down this road to discuss it 2 other times. I'm gonna ask all 4 of the board members if we want to continue discussing this or if we are happy the way it's been written already. So I'm gonna start with myself. I think we've discussed this already and would prefer not to discuss it anymore.
Okay, this is Jess, and this all came from that 2 years of notifying the zoning board that you're not finished and when you, how far along you are on the project. And when you think you will finish it, and the terrible scuttlebutts and rumors and stuff that we had in this town over that is what inspired us to bring it to a term of 3 years with the option of renewal. So, I believe that we need to stick with the 3-1 vote that we had back in 8/12/24.
Ed,
I'm in favor of what Jesse just said. We already voted on it. And 5 years is plenty enough time to finish it.
okay, I'm gonna say, as the chairman, we're going to leave it as written. We voted on it 2 different times. And leave it where it is. If the board of trustees decide that they want to make a change to it, then it can be taken up there. So I'm going to finish up on page 14. I did not see any other changes myself, nor did we make any other changes. And 15 is the same way. And let's move to 16. And on 16, under number 2, number 2 is discussing with the variance, and we struck under B.
Go ahead.
We struck under B within 15 feet, 15, and changed it to 20 calendar days to give a little more time to send out the notifications. To bring it back to the zoning board. That was approved back on September 9th of 24. And then under C, we simply added the word calendar days, 10 calendar days, where it said 10 days, we changed the calendar, just to clarify.
Sorry. Ooh, I got that. Oh, yeah. Okay, thank you. Sorry to interrupt. I missed that we were in a section that I had noticed something. So back on page 13, this is 13. 13E, this refers to OWTS, and it says no residential or business building permit shall be issued until a professionally engineered OWTS and a water supply design have been presented to the zoning board of adjustment, and that's inconsistent. Right, that's pretty inconsistent with our OWTS ordinance. And my suggestion would be to just change it and say no residential or business building permit for new construction shall be issued until a professionally engineered OWTS have been approved by the town Board of Health or its designee, because that's what the process is now. So I just had noticed that.
Can't talk.
Yeah, there you go.
Can't get this one out.
I can take over.
Didn't want that in.
No, I'm gonna replace the board.
Yeah, you never can know which one it is, unfortunately.
Oh, that's my thing. That's like that.
Okay, yeah, so that was something I noticed just in reviewing. But currently what happens is either the Board of Health or its designee approves OWTS permits. So that should be what this says, to be consistent with that.
I would fully agree with that.
Have been.
Any other thoughts or comments?
So it's E, yep, and then it's about the third line down, it says, and a water supply design have been presented to the zoning board of adjustment. I'm just gonna scratch that part, and I'm gonna add approved by the town of Pitkin Board of Health or its designee. Which is currently the EHA, but that may change in the future, so that way it can cover both circumstances.
And can you mark through and add that, and then I just can reprint page 13?
Yeah,
That's what
absolutely.
asked. Thank you.
All right, those are good catch, sir. As I have read in other places. This is where we change. All right, so then we back, we were okay on 15. We were looking at, I think 16, I think everybody's okay with the 20 calendar days and the adding the word calendar, pretty minor changes.
And the clarification, the way it's printed before, it didn't know if it was business days or calendar days, and we had some run-ins, and so calendar is it, and I think that's fantastic.
And then under, on page 17, under the appeals. Appeals of zoning board of adjustment decisions must be made in writing and filed with the town clerk. That clarifies that, the process. That. We okay to that point? And then under section 20 is violations. Section 20A added at the bottom, complaints may be submitted by any resident property owner of the town of Pitkin. And that is the question that we have sent to the attorney for clarification. So we're going to leave that right now just the way it is till we get clarification back from the attorney.
I concur.
Okay. So that takes me through the end of 17.
I have a question about 18 when we get there. please.
Okay, then we'll go to 18. And Sarah, what's your question?
So under application for amendment to the zoning code, there's the list of tasks, including public notice. And for most of it, I mean, for variances, and then when the town board was looking at just rezoning that whole area, above Main Street behind, Sage Lane, those little kind of triangle areas.
Triangles.
That was a different situation, but in this section right here, there's no requirement to notify adjacent neighbors. And this came up in my mind just recently because of Mr. Schellenberg's request, and so I just assumed, because for everything else that happens, we always notify adjacent neighbors, but when I looked, it wasn't in here. So I didn't do it because I have evidently never done it because it's not in here. But I wondered if the zoning board might want to consider that if the zoning change request is being made, that letters should be sent to adjacent neighbors. Because, so for example, recently we had the NASOs
For variance.
for variances.
And
And the variance is gonna have zero effect on any of his neighbors. But if a business moved in to, if property was rezoned from residential to business and somebody put a business there, I would say that has the potential to have a significant effect on all the neighbors. And so it seems like there's a little bit of incongruency here between making sure everybody knows about a variance that nobody would have noticed otherwise. And then here we have this kind of situation and there's minimal notice provided to the neighbors.
So correct me if I'm wrong. I think I understand what you're saying. On a variance, you send notification to all adjacent.
All adjacent neighbors. Sometimes we're sending up to 12. I mean, if the corner touches the corner,
Right.
they get 11.
But the way this is written for a zoning change,
Right, nobody gets notification. And that seems pretty inconsistent. So what I would suggest is we could just copy and paste the same notice that's provided for a variance, X number of calendar days, send out the mailing, and just do it the same way that we would notify for a variance.
so in looking, I'm reading it the way it currently is written. Really, the only thing it says under 3, before any approval for changes code is enacted, a public hearing shall be held within 15 calendar days, advance notice of the time and place to be published in the newspaper having general circulation with the town and at the official town of Pitkin posting location.
Right.
So in addition to that, the variance doesn't have a public notice.
So the difference between the variance is the variance does have public notice, but not in the
It's not in
newspaper.
the newspaper.
Right. But considering the number of second homeowners here, I would suggest that most of our homeowners do not regularly take the Madison County Times, and therefore they are not receiving proper notice. You know, and in here too, CRS 312305, which is mentioned in 4, that specifically has to do with an adjacent neighbor's ability to file a protest. But if the adjacent neighbors aren't noticed, the town is not providing opportunity for that.
So,
I think the town has taken the position historically in most situations to provide more notice as opposed to less. And so I think this is pretty inconsistent with the rest of the code and also other procedures within the town.
so I'll bring it up to the board. Any thoughts, comments?
I'm not
Yes.
totally versed on it, but we will have to have a public hearing. And I don't know if that's notification enough or not.
Well,
No,
the public hearing wouldn't, other than 24 hours prior to the meeting,
correct.
would be the only notice that a hearing, the public hearing would be held.
I think it's at least 24 hours.
At least minimum 24 hours. Yeah. Or it's to be published only in the newspaper. Ed, what are your thoughts?
I don't think it hurt.
Okay, Roger, you were trying to say something. Go ahead.
Yeah, on a application for amendment to the code, item 4, it reads, the adoption of any amendment to this code shall be require the favorable vote of a majority of the duly elected members of the Board of Trustees present at the meeting held to consider such amendment, except where there is a filed written protest against such amendment under the provisions of section 3123-305 CRS, in which case that statute shall govern. But that statute only governs if there is a written protest. We had a zoning request that was turned down because there wasn't enough board members, even though they had a majority vote at that particular meeting. And here it clearly says that the majority of the duly elected members of the Board of Trustees present at the meeting. Now, if this is in violation of Colorado law or something, yeah, or whatever, but I mean, this is written into our zoning ordinance. I'm just curious why it continually gets overlooked.
Okay, Roger, you brought up a separate issue than what we were trying to address. And I understand what you're saying on section 4, but I don't want to overlook what you're saying.
Okay.
I'd like 3 first, and that is notification to adjoining properties. If we feel the zoning, an amendment to the zoning code as far as zones like business or commercial.
Okay.
I think what Sarah's saying is we should follow the way we send out notification to adjoining properties like we do for variances for a zoning code request change. And that's that would be under 3.
You're talking A3, just make sure. we're all
Yeah,
set.
just A3 right now, and then we'll address what Roger's saying on film.
And Mr. Chairman, what I would like to address, make sure I'm of right mind, any that's in circulation or in process or being discussed today or yesterday, if we add that notifying the neighbors adjoining property, it would be the next variance request, not one that's already on the table.
So
So this is not enacted.
yes,
If we add that paragraph tonight, it
right,
can't possibly be acted and fulfilled with the trustees even next month.
No, that's not the purpose. The
No.
purpose is that when I went to look to prepare for the request, I noticed, wow, we don't have a notification requirement like we do for
Correct.
everything else. And so my suggestion is that for consistency and
Yes.
information for the neighbors, that the board should add it. And it could be the same as for variances, the timeframes, which would make the life of the clerk easier, because it's the same number of days.
same,
And I'm in agreement, but I'm just helping Roger to understand that something we're currently acting on, it will not be affected by that addition to A3 for what's in the middle of today.
so if we were to add the notification to all adjacent property owners, if we agree tonight, we need to add it to A3. It does not go into effect until the Board of Trustees approves this zoning code.
Right, it would be months,
And
actually,
it is gonna be months.
unless the zoning board was to direct otherwise,
Right.
which it has the power to do. I wouldn't say for the one that's coming up in less than a week, but for any future, between now and the time that this is enacted, the zoning board could direct that I do this. But at this time, no, there's not a requirement in place.
So, and that's just for clarification. If anybody's thinking that if we approve this tonight, it's going to go into effect tonight, no, it does not. We're only agreeing to put it into the revisions of the zoning code that the Board of Trustees will ultimately have to approve.
And the rest of my story here is the clerk is the one that notifies those adjacent property owners.
That would be
That was my
correct.
understanding.
That is correct.
Thank you.
And just, I mean, I'll give my 2 cents on it because I haven't really said yet. But I think we need to be consistent in both variances and zoning code requests, so we have notification the same way.
Should I go ahead and so my thought was to just copy and paste variances, and where it said variance, I'm gonna change
That's-
a request, so it's pretty consistent. I'm gonna put that at the end of 3.
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy with page 18.
Okay, I'm waiting for Sarah to catch up.
I'm
Oh,
good.
Okay.
Sorry.
And then I don't want to dismiss what Roger said about section 4A4. And I guess I'm not totally aware of a case that he's referring to.
I think there's a little confusion. This is just a procedural statement, and all it is saying that the only thing that can stop moving forward by a majority vote would be a protest as filed under section 3123-305, and that refers to a person owning a certain percentage of the land adjacent to the property under question. So it's purely procedural, it's by statute, so it's not, I mean, everything's up for discussion, but if you want to follow the law, it's not up for discussion. This is just the way it is, and it's just listed here so that people know the procedure.
Roger, does that clarify for you?
No, but I'd like to see something in writing on that.
Roger, what do you want to see in writing specifically?
I'd like to know what's wrong with that paragraph.
There's nothing wrong with it. Nobody said that there was any problem with it.
Okay. Now, changes in the code and changes in uh, well, anything else. I see we have to address the public, various different things. And I realize the joining property owners and all that kind of stuff are part of it. But this is primarily falls on the board of trustees to do all of this. Anyway, they're the ones that, have the final say. I'm not sure. We're just telling them what their job is. Is that the purpose of this?
Yes, this statement was added in 2022. It might have been in a previous code, but it was referred by the attorney at the time. And it's just a procedural statement. So what they're saying is that when you adopt the code, this is the requirement for votes. And the only way to, well, one of the ways to stop that is by the provisions of this particular section of the statute, which refers to changes in zoning, which would be a change in the code, because it changes the map, if that makes sense. They're just kind of listing out, this could happen, or if there's a specific zoning change request that goes through and a neighbor has the ability by way of the amount of property that they own to file a protest under section 3123.305, that would govern. In other words, that would be higher than a vote. And it could potentially override a vote of the trustees. It's
Okay,
just.
thank you. Thank you. I wasn't aware that section 3123.305 kicked in, yeah, and overrode trustee vote here. I didn't understand that.
Okay,
Okay, so then let's move on. I think 18 is good then. Then we go to page 19, and under 19 on number 7. We added, before any approval for change to the zoning map is enacted, public hearing shall be held within 15 calendar days advance notice of the time and place to be published in the newspaper, having general circulation of the town and at the official town and Pitkin posting locations. Then we struck lines 9 and 10.
it looks like 10 just got moved. That's the same thing that we moved to
Oh,
7.
we moved it up to 7, that's correct. Oh, I see it now that I read it. Okay. We're okay there?
I missed that, sir.
Yeah, I was trying to read it through the lines and then I realized that's right. And in section 24 under complaints, added any person aggrieved. An apparent violation because they are already. Under complaints.
So that was highlighted because it is not consistent with,
Up
right.
above.
So that's the attorney thing again.
Yeah,
We
that-
have to-
Yeah, that goes back to section 20. And then I'm gonna jump down to 20 should be okay. Page 21 under the appendix. Under town inspections, we still have highlighted for the 97 Uniform Building Code Volume 1. And we discussed at the last meeting, I believe, that we formed a simple committee with the building inspector, Tom Gibb, and Phil Deutsch and myself to look at and compare 97 to 2012 International Residential Code, 2015, 2018. We have not had that meeting yet. I was hoping to do it this week. And Tom told me last week that he's out of town this week. I'm going to try to get that scheduled for next week for the three of us to sit down and just do a real quick comparison of all 3 or 4 of them to see what direction it might go. And then my intent is to bring that back at the next zoning board meeting. To give you our findings from that on committee. So we did decide on the inspection zone that we'd have a footer inspection, a foundation inspection, a framing, and then a final.
Yeah, I don't have anything listed for the final. Is that potentially gonna change after your meeting? So maybe we just leave it blank until you decide.
I'd leave it blank at this point till we decide. I think as a board, I think we did agree that we. Part of it's going to decide upon the final version of International Residential Code, but all of them do specify there needs to be a final inspection.
Mhm.
And then I think we did have the inspections that we had or that we had given out at the last meeting, or talked about the last meeting. And that's when this topic came back up, because our inspections that we agreed to use from 2012 correlate to the International Residential Code, but our current code says 97 Universal Building Code, and they don't correlate there. So there'll be more clarification on that.
Okay, so I'm just for now, then I'll leave that as is.
Okay,
So then there's just that and then the attorney question. Pending.
yes.
Okay.
And then our state inspections, we made the changes there. For the town of Pitkin does not issue electrical permits or perform electrical inspections for electrical installations. Electrical permits are issued by the state electrical inspections, are conducted by a state or electrical inspector. That falls on the state, and then basically the same thing on the plumbing as well. Struck out of our old code, the verbiage on 5%. So as to Sarah's point, the only 2 outlying items that I'm aware of at this point are the question for the town attorney. Blank of what it was.
Is the question for the town attorney and the inspections. I think that's
Yeah,
it.
that's the question. Yeah, the question for the town attorney, the inspections, and then also which building code,
Yes,
UBC or which
Okay.
IRC we use. So it's actually 3 items. That's
In all of my notes, the mainest thing that was pointed out. That it was a certificate of occupancy to be reinstated.
that is one of the outstanding items. Once we identify the specific International Residential Code or UBC we go with, each one of those do say that a final inspection was certificate of occupancy. So we'll address that once we reach.
And it'll be back in our new code. Well, I want to thank you, Sarah, Mr. Chairman, for getting this all highlighted, put in order, and neat enough that we can read it.
I want to thank all the zoning board members for working so diligently for the last year and a half on it.
And our audience.
Anyway, these 3 items, and that's why. All right, any other questions or comments on the zoning code? Either from the zoning board, I'll even ask if there's any. Well, let me go to the zoning board first.
This is Jess, and I'm very happy with what we just went through, especially after we took some key inputs from the attorney.
All right, I'll open it up to the public if the public has any input at this point. All right, I'll take that as a no. And then go back to. Got a mess in front of me. Go back to the agenda. There it is. I found it. It's here. So that takes care of new business. The only old business we have on the agenda is the building permit update. And I've condensed it down to a one pager. So I think after the last meeting, I think I made a statement for 24 and earlier, any of the closed permits, I was going to take off the visible spreadsheet and show only the open or incomplete or in progress permits. And then 2025 building permits will stay open, but they'll stay on the spreadsheet all year long, even those are completed. They'll stay on there. But right now, we only have two that Tom has given us. I know he's got one or maybe two others that he's done in February. They're not on here yet, but they will be after the board of trustee meeting. We don't have them from his report. And I believe on our open permits, I think we're current on all the open permits that are greater than 2 years for update on those.
I don't know where you put this in our spreadsheet, but on Molly Gibbs, we do have a letter of her completion and desires and where she is. And also on the Daniels barndominium, we have letters from
Yes.
them. So,
Yes.
that makes, I don't know that we have a column for that, but they are up to date. I just want to add that to our spreadsheet.
Good point, because I thought I had it in, and I don't see it. Yes,
Should, Rob and Chuck was be in progress, make status. I think the EHA been approved on both as well. It doesn't say.
so I didn't put an update on those because as the board on the wells, we don't manage EHA, the board of trustees, or the environmental health board does. The only reason I added them on this sheet, to be quite honest, is when Tom gave me the permit numbers, he had all the permit numbers from all building permits as well. That's why I just added them.
That probably won't happen this year. It did last year because initially Tom was approving wells and then partway through the year, Eddie requested that the EHA start approving wells.
So if they don't, if Tom doesn't report them out on it,
Right.
that's. I'm still looking through them. I know I had a section here on the Molly's and Daniels on when we received the letters. Because I have Tom's in the spreadsheet for the 409 Main Street. And
Maybe it ought to go under notes.
it needs to go under notes, and I don't understand why it's not there. Because I know I have copies of those.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering, I'll have to go back and look at the older spreadsheet. I may have had them in there, and I may have inadvertently deleted the dates when I give it place. So I'll go back to that. Any other comments on the spreadsheet?
I'm happy to see it reduced to one page.
Yeah. me too.
And imagine Tom is also.
All right, so that's it under old business. I don't have anything else on the agenda or any other items at this point. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn
Jeff so moves.
and a second.
I'll second that.
And Herman seconds, just moved. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you to everyone online. And
Thank you, Roger.
our one participant in the audience here. And Roger,
Attendee,
yeah, one attendee in person.
our non-participatory attendee.
And everybody have a good evening. Thanks for all your help.